Today we're progressing the E90 project. If you're new to the channel or if you just need an update, after many years of ownership of the E90 used by my wife Hannah, it started to become rather unreliable, as has been captured on my YouTube videos. But the final straw for Hannah was one of the many oil leaks that we've had, at which point enough was enough and we went and got the Vauxhall Mokka. The Vauxhall Mokka! Which you might have seen in my previous video fixing one of the numerous issues we've also had on that car. And really it was a very good thing that we did get that Mokka, because after I did fix that oil leak, the ECU then went down on the E90 and it wouldn't start for a good couple of months until we fixed that problem. But once we did fix that problem, I had an E90, as well as the Astra and as well as the Bmw M3, which was subsequently sold because 4 cars was too many for me to handle. So what do you do in that situation? Well, obviously you wrap the car, don't you? Which is why it's blue. The wrapping took a good number of months, all winter in fact, but once we finally finished that we could move on with doing a few more modifications. So we started with this spoiler, which I'm a big fan of and I really think enhances the look of the car. But what else can we do? Well, I've already told you in quite a few videos that the plan next is to get the car lowered and just sort out the whole stance of it, because looking down the side of the car, it's like it's some kind of hover car with no wheels. See what I mean? Today we're actually finally going to get into modifying the wheel stance. If you've seen my last few videos on the E90, you'll have also heard me say quite a few times that I haven't been looking forward to lowering this car, and I'm sorry to say that yet again I'm putting that part of it off. There is a reason for this. This is going to be the last job I ever do in that garage. My next video will detail why. There have been clues in all of my previous videos pretty much, but the result is that I'm a little bit time constrained and I don't have time to lower the car and for anything to go wrong and have a car stuck in the garage. We can fit the wheel spacers though, because that is a relatively quick job, and I thought it'd be useful to do a separate video on that to see how I went about measuring what spacers I felt I needed. To measure what spacers that we need, you need something this shape, it doesn't have to be a spirit level, and a ruler. If you want your wheel to be flush with the body of the car, which is fashionable these days, so not like this, but more like this, and even that could be a bit flush with the bodywork. Get your spirit level, put it flush with the wheel and bring it up to the arch. Careful not to scratch your wrap or your paint. Put a marker on where the level sticks out from the arch, and then get your ruler and measure. So 4 centimeters is how far the wheel needs to come this way before it will sit flush with the arch. So a 40mm spacer is ultimately what I would need. Now I've gone slightly conservative and I've gone with 35mm, so it's potentially going to be half a centimetre short, maybe look quite similar to how the Astra did. These are stance plus spacers, so that's the rear. Same process on the front then. It's 2 centimetres, 20mm. So I've gone with 17mm, so potentially 3mm short. As I've done with the back, I've gone slightly on the conservative side because the last thing you want is rubbing or anything like that. So that's that. I've had these since February, so let's finally get them on the car. First step there is to magic your wheels off with the click of a finger, and then starting at the rear, there's a bit of a difference between the front and the rear. As I just showed you with the measurements, the rears are 3.5 centimetres or 35mm wide, whereas the fronts are half of that. As a result, you don't want to put something that thick on and then try and put one bolt to go through the wheel through this and into the hub. Putting wheel spacers on is a little bit sketchy as it is, so you certainly don't want to do that when you're dealing with that thicker spacer. On the front, because the spacers are thinner, that is what we're going to do, but on the rear what we've got here is a spacer that has holes in it these wheel bolts that have come with it are screwed into the holes that ultimately the wheel is going to bolt into. So what is going to happen is these bolts that came with the spacer are going to go through these deeper holes and out there, and that is going to bolt into the hub like this. It's a tight fit. Before I can slot that on, I just need to get some sandpaper and clean this up a bit. So I have just put grease on the hub here, and the purpose of that is to stop the wheel spacer sticking to the hub if ever I need to change the disc, and there is a slight lip on the disc, so at some point these will need changing. If we don't put grease on, then getting the spacer off could be very difficult, and it does feel like it is going to be a very tight fit anyway. So we definitely don't want any corrosion causing a bond between the hub and the spacer. But as I put the grease on, just felt that between the threads where the wheel bolts go to, where currently the wheel doesn't actually touch this area, there is just a bit of grime that's built up over the years, which has created a bit of a raised surface. The last thing we want is for that to go on not being flush. So if it's ever placed slightly at an angle like that, as the wheel goes round, it's going to feel a bit bumpy in the car. So on we go with the wheel space then. As I say, it is going to be a tight fit, so we want to line up the bolts before I bash it on, because I'm not going to be able to rotate it once it is on. And we'll just give it a tap, try and do it evenly around the spacer. This is a very tight fit, so much so you question whether it's the right spacer. Do not fancy getting this off again. As with wheels, these need to be torqued up, and a quick Google tells me that you should torque them up to the usual wheel torque spec, so that is what I'm going to do for this. Now I've done that, I'm just going to test fit the wheel. Given how tight it was getting the spacer on, just want to check that this ridge here actually fits on the wheel. Yeah, perfect. So we just need to put the grease around the spacer for the same reason that we don't want the wheel getting stuck on the spacer down the line. I'm running pretty low on grease here. Hold your horses, because I've just remembered that when we fitted these and I ordered those, I also got these, and those go on the wheels. So while we've got the wheels off, we can get those fitted. Now I'm not thinking that by fitting these that is the wheels sorted. I have mentioned a little while ago now that I needed to do something with the wheels, because look at the state of them. That is like 18 years worth of brake dust build-up, and I don't know whether to just get the wheels refurbed. I mean, ideally you get new wheels, don't you? But wheels are expensive, and even getting them refurbed is going to be about 500 quid, and if I was to sell the car, I'm not sure I'd get that much more than that. So I am doing this project on a budget. One thing I could try is to get some wheel acid, give these a spray and try and get this brake dust off and see if the wheels polish up. But that does make quite a big difference compared to this very worn BMW badge. I like it. Let's get the wheels on the car. That is the passenger side rear wheel done. I will now do the other side, which I won't bother showing you because it's exactly the same. So let's now move on to the front. Front should be a much more straightforward process, because these are the spacers. They're stuck together, never not. Hopefully you can see those are a bit narrower than the rear ones. Probably should have got the two together to compare them, but it's too late now because the rear ones are fitted. So those will just slot on to the hub. No bolting these to the hub, the wheels will just go on over the top, and the wheel bolts will go through the wheel, through the whole of the spacer into the hub. So quite straightforward. I will put you on time warp. Just stopped the time warp there because it's something I need to tell you. So because on the rear we had the spacers bolting to the hub and then the wheel bolting separately to the spacer. All the wheel nut bolts were the ones that came with the spacer, but the wheel bolts that bolted the wheel to the spacer were just the old wheel bolts. If I were to use the old wheel bolts on the front, because we're not bolting the spacer to the hub, this is the length of the old wheel bolt, and you can see that the spacer takes up nearly all of that. Even if there was any thread on the bolt having gone through the wheel and the spacer to actually go in the hub, it would be hanging on literally by a thread. So I've got some longer bolts, the old one and the new one, and the difference in length of thread being, I can hold those together so you can see, well, it's about the width of the spacer. So we go on with the new longer bolts. And we're done. The wheel spacers are fitted to the E90. There was just one problem, and it is quite a big one. Just now when I explained about the longer wheel bolts, you might have picked up that I wasn't quite expecting the wheel bolt to be shorter than the old wheel bolt plus the new spacer. And what that translated to when I wound them into the wheel with the spacer in between the wheel and the hub is that it was about 4 and a bit turns before the wheel bolt became tight. So as a check, when I did the other side, I checked how many turns it was to get the old wheel bolts out of the wheel without the spacer, and it was about 6 turns. There's always more chance of the spacer that something bad's going to happen, so you do not want less bolt holding your wheel to the car, which is exactly what I've got at this moment. So the bolts that I fitted, the longer ones, were 40 millimeters. I've gone back and I've ordered 45 millimeters, which should give me a tad more thread into the hub than the old wheel bolts without the spacers. Hopefully you follow me. Anyway, I am concerned about it, so I'm not going to drive the car until those new bolts arrive. We're going to have to sleep in it for now and wait for the postman. I'll see you then. The wheel bolts have now arrived, but before we get into replacing those, we have one more BMW badge that we can replace with the M anniversary badge. I've had this for ages and I haven't put it on because I wanted to do it with you guys. Here we go. Peel the double-sided tape. Make sure we get it on straight. Oh, shouldn't have done it like that. Ah, man, I've ruined it. Pushed it in so hard, I've dented it at the bottom. So let's try and put it out and try again. Right, it's vaguely got some shape back to it. It's not as good as it should have been, but the only place it had stuck on was where I'd pushed it in. So let's put some more sticky tape on top of the sticky tape that's already there. Learn from my mistakes. If you ever get one of these, be gentle. Put some more tape on first. Right, there's 2 layers of tape, hopefully. Okay, so then it is a bit misshapen, but not as dented as it was. The old badge was a bit tired, so we'll call it an upgrade. Onto the bolts then. So let's swap them out with the bolts on the front that are too short, and I will show you what I mean by them being too short and how many turns it takes to wind the bolt in. Thus the bolts cracked off, I can now undo them by hand. So 1 turn, 2 turn, 3 turn, not out yet, 4 turn, and how much more to get it out? Just 4 turns and a tiny bit. And here is the new bolt, so compare it with the one I've just taken out. You can see we have a little bit more length, another 3 or 4 bits of thread on there, meaning there will be more thread going into the wheel hub, meaning there is more bolt holding the wheel onto the car. Let's get the bolt started. Okay, see the 17 is our indicator, how many turns we've done. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a bit is as much as the old bolt would have needed. 5, 6, tightening up now, 7, so about 7.5. And the old original bolts were about 6.5, so we've got more bolt in the hub than we did on the OEM setup. which is good. I will feel safer. Let's replace the rest of those shorter bolts with the new longer bolts and get them torqued up. And again on the other side. And that is the new wheel bolts then. It's occurred to me that you'd probably want to know how much those wheel spacers cost. So the front one was £35 and the rear one, which was the thicker, chunkier one, was £76. So in total, that is, if my maths is correct, £111, which I think isn't too bad given how ridiculous the car looks before compared to what it looks like now, which we will see in a minute. In fact, let's not waste any more time. Let's hit the road and we'll get to that. I'm so happy how this has turned out. Just look down the side of the car now. Those wheels have been found. Looking down the side, you can just about see them. They're pretty much level. And from the back, love that. I think that looks awesome. That's completely transformed the stance of the car already, and we haven't even lowered it yet. I think that is a really good mod that we've done there. We still need to lower it. That will be, I promise, the next video on the E90. Can I promise that? You never know what's going to crop up, but all being well, we will be lowering the E90 next. And as I said earlier, it will not be in the old garage. So that's coming next. Hopefully I will catch you for that one. I will see you then. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye. Oh, I've hit record. Why have I hit record? I don't know, delete me.